The following episode may contain spoilers for the game Frosthaven. Welcome to episode 4 of our board game podcast, A Master's Degree in Rolling Terribly, where you amDirt, I amDirt, everybody amDirt. I'm your host, Detty. Joining me is my co-host, a man who gives me grief every time I select a battle goal, Gaz. Say hi, Gaz.
Wow, hang on a second there. Hello first. That's because you always choose the worst battle goals.
I don't think that's really fair. Every time I select anything, I cop an excuse as to why it's not good for the scenario.
Pretty sure most of the battle goals I've seen you select do nothing for most of the scenario.
Say hi, Gaz.
Hi, Gaz.
Well, we had a really fun Monday. But before we go there, can you give us a informative and detailed recap from episode 3?
Yes, definitely can. So one of the things we learned was it's very important to identify the win condition, or more importantly, identify how you can lose very quickly. We also learned that the Shadow Pooper, aka the Death Walker, is a last quarter absolute hero. So doesn't do much in the first 3 quarters of the scenario, but definitely pulls it all together in the last quarter. And collectively, we're still all unsure as exactly what the Drifter and or Detty does well.
Okay. I get that. But this week, yeah, we saw it. So this week, we actually had a link scenario from scenario 3, which meant we actually had to go straight into the Kopernik Mountains from the last scenario, like straight to there. In search of a conclusion to the conflict occurring between the Ice Cube clan and Frosty the Snowman's family.
You're definitely deep into the lore, aren't you?
I'm trying. We also get Outposty and Buildery as we put our construction skills and resource sharing abilities to the test. We get crabs, and Gaz and I put our differences aside and get to enjoy a moment of growth and excitement. That's not how it sounds.
But it was good.
Very good. And I guess most importantly, at least for me, we actually had our first amDirt moment in Frosthaven. And it was very annoying for me.
Oh, it's hilarious. Yeah, and definitely changed it all. And I think it really encapsulates what we love about the randomness when it comes to games like this, whether it be dice or, Frosthaven, Gloomhaven, flipping over cards. I think the best thing is that we can all celebrate the bad rolls as much as we celebrate the good rolls.
Look, when it happened and I announced I amDirt, I remember throwing my card across the table, and I think I knocked one of the elite mobs over. And then I felt really bad.
Yeah.
I felt really bad. But it was like everyone was celebrating except me.
Oh, we thought it was great.
I bet.
So jumping into scenario 4, we didn't have a road event because it's one of the forced link scenarios, meaning as soon as we finished the other one, scenario 3, we had to jump straight into scenario 4. I feel like this is going to happen a little bit, looking at the way that the scenarios are connected on the little Advent calendar opener board. So when we got into scenario 4, though, it was really cool because it was that continuation of the scenario 3 where we had helped the priest, who was part of, I think you dubbed them the Frosty and the Snowman family.
I think so.
Yeah, the ice shards.
They're just cold people. I don't know. Ice walkers, okay. Death, cold man. I don't know.
Yeah. So as you can see, we're very, very deep into the lore. And anyway, it was made very clear that this was going to be a decision. So we knew at some point in this scenario we were going to have to make a call on which side of the factions we went to, who we were going to side with. At the very start, though, it wasn't made clear, because I kind of thought we were going to get in there. It's going to be like, oh, here's one path, here's another path. But it actually opened up like a couple of the other ones where it was a corridor. It had some Algox guards, some more of Detty's favorite archers. And yeah, it was really just like, oh, here's a corridor. Go deal with this. And it wasn't until we actually got into the next room, which we'll kind of talk a little bit more about later, that the big choice came. And I was like really impressed with kind of how they framed that up. What did you think about just the start and the setup of the scenario?
The setup was very confusing because I'm setting up the scenario, and in this particular scenario, it's got an 11A and 11B. So if anyone's done this particular scenario, it's based off the previous one. If you completed scenario 2, you'd be setting it up off, B. And if you're doing 3, you'd be setting it off A. So I started reading A, and then I realized, oh, this is the wrong one. So I had to set up the other one. So there's literally 2 pages for the same scenario, just with different introductions and, yeah, just different monsters and things like that. So once we worked that out and I got Fortella to read that out, I then realized we were doing, plan B, essentially. So set up the corridor. We had the guards in there, and my favorite, like you said, the archers and all that. And then, what I found confusing, other than the setup, was also the scenario goal. And I don't know if you recall me reading it out, and I had to read it several times, because all we had every time we start, we just have that room that we start in, and we've got the creatures in there. And the scenario thing was literally saying something along the lines of, you need to kill one of this creature or this creature, which we hadn't seen either of them yet. And you had to contribute, like one of them has to die, and you have to contribute at least over half or more of its health in damage. And I'm reading this out like, I don't know what any of this means.
Yeah, it's interesting because that happened last scenario as well. So in scenario 3, where the goal was to basically destroy the ice sheet, I think we had to kill all enemies and destroy the ice sheet, which was the object at the end of the room that we piled into. I remember when you read that out, it doesn't make a lot of sense because it doesn't really tell you what you're supposed to be doing. I mean, the kill all enemies obviously makes sense. But from playing Gloomhaven, I assumed that it was going to be some object we had to break. I always feel like there's room there to almost drip feed what the objectives are through that process. So, for example, with this last one we did, saying kill all enemies and access the next room, that's your goal, right? And that's your goal. And then when you get in there, then say, cool, next objective is this. Because, yeah, you're right. I remember you reading it out. We're like, oh, okay. So now we kind of know there's going to be something happening. Oh, we have no idea what it is, and we don't know how or what we're supposed to achieve, but we're going to be working towards that.
It's kind of a double-edged sword because they kind of need to give you the win condition and, what's not the win condition, or, like a lose condition, etc. And I actually was really, I don't know, against it at the start, but the more I think about it, the more I actually don't mind it because, yes, it's confusing. But it kind of, I don't know, leads to some kind of excitement where I'm like, I have no idea what this means. Hopefully I'll open the door and then, the 2 guys will be standing there with a sign saying hit me or, do this. And then it becomes a little bit clearer. But the problem with that is, you may end up misreading it or misunderstanding it and play it out wrong and then feel really, cheated that you didn't get to experience the scenario properly or something along those lines.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I'm sure that they playtest the crap out of this anyway, so they probably did try multiple different ideas for how to set up the objectives and went with what people said was the most streamlined. So, look, it's probably the other thing, and this is not a criticism at all, it's probably comes out just because we've now had in, 3 scenarios, 2 interesting-ish style objectives that haven't just been kill all enemies, right? So the more of those you put in, the more complex it's going to be, the more confusing it possibly is, but the more interesting it is. It's like that, you buy depth in a game through complexity. So, I think it has worked quite well. Once we've just read it 5 times.
Exactly. So, we had more guards and archers. Now, we learned from the last scenario that if we spend a bit of time at the front and we don't deal with the archers, we get into a lot of trouble. So I did exactly what I did last time, good old drifty boy things, and head straight to the back. I'm
Well,
pretty sure there was
when you
some
say
complaining
head straight to the back. So if I was to go straight to the shops, I
after
would
the
assume,
first round.
yeah, I would assume that straight to the shops would mean I was going from here to the shops straight away.
Well, one
Right?
of my
Not,
cards is put my sneakers on so I can run faster.
nah, see, now I think you're making things up. See, yeah, see, if I say go straight to the shops and you're like, yeah, I'm just going to stand around for an hour and not do anything, then I'm going to go to the shops. Probably not going straight to the shops. And I feel like we had that kind of scenario play out with you going straight to the archers.
So round two, I went straight to the archers after putting both my shoes on and my gloves on. And then I went and proceeded to, well, I actually one-shot one of the archers immediately. And then the other two started beating me up a bit. Pretty sure I still discarded the card. Nothing like the first scenario. But it was good. It was really, really good. And we actually didn't really have much of a problem dealing with that particular room. After clearing that room,
The card, though, discarding a card. Sorry, just to jump in there. Was that the when we repeatedly thought that you were going into tank mode, and then you proceeded to jump in and get booked by the archers,
Yeah.
and realized that you didn't have any tanking stuff on because you didn't think that that was the right option?
Well, that means
So
I
you
got to put
spent,
my body armor on after my shoes and my gloves, and that means I spend 2 turns. So round 3, I head to the back. By that stage, the archers will come forward, shoot you in the face, and you'd complain.
yeah. So I think that's what we're learning about the Drifter is that it's really good at taking ages to put all of its clothes on and get ready for the fight. Meanwhile, the rest of us have to do stuff, which doesn't work well with the Deathwalker, who also takes 3/4 of a scenario to place their shadows everywhere. So basically, we have 2 of the 4 characters not doing anything.
I hate you
Really.
so much. So we also experienced our first negative scenario rules kind of thing, where everyone had to put 2 -1 modifier cards into their modified deck, which kind of hurts a little bit, kind of sucks. But
I don't think I drew mine at all.
I definitely did.
But it's hard to tell, though. I feel like, I mean, unless you're paying attention, because I know they've got an extra little symbol on them that says that obviously things like curses are way more pronounced. If you start this scenario with no curses, normally, then you have some, you're going to notice that come out. But yeah, I feel like that our decks at the moment are so bad because there's so many negatives in there that you just expect to draw negatives. So adding more in there was just like, well, of course I'm just going to draw bad, right? Because I already do. So
no, that's very true. So generic kind of first room stuff, nothing really of note. Calvin did go on a bit of a curse spree. I don't know whether or not he's just adding more of those cards to his deck because I haven't actually seen his, the cards he's not bringing. But he cursed a lot of them to the point where every time they went to attack me, they would still hit me. But every time they went to attack one of his skeletons, it would miss because they would pull a curse. And this was brilliant and also sucked for me at the same time because it was making me rage a little bit that these skeletons were, in air quotes, tanking better than me. But that was something I definitely remember.
His skeletons with 3 HP are so tanky. Like, if we were all just skeletons instead of our character classes, we actually wouldn't have struggled with any of these scenarios so far.
Yeah, well, I keep getting turned into one by the end of the scenario when I exhaust. All right, so while I was at the front doing all this awesome stuff, did you do anything really cool back there? Like, I wasn't paying attention. I was too busy progressing.
Yeah, I did. I was doing amazing things. And one of the things that I was doing is not burning my cards, which is what I actually need to do in order to progress my XP meter at all. It's challenging knowing how long a scenario is. This is something that I know from playing Gloomhaven a lot, is you get into a swing with your characters, because it's an attrition game, right? Like, you've got to pace yourself. You can't just burn all your really good cards in the first room and realize there's 2 more rooms later on, and now you're just out of steam. I'm not used to playing a character that really needs to probably be burning a card like at least every other turn. And so I kind of was like, no, I can go through the first few turns without really doing anything major. Nothing really lined up for me to have that optimal turn. And, we'll talk about the second room in a minute, but I basically got in there and went like, oh, okay, well, now I have to basically try to drop my whole deck because otherwise I finished the encounter with no XP. because it's
Yeah.
literally the only way I can do it. So, yeah, I think I had a couple of turns. I've got a couple of weird AOE shapes that I managed to hit multiple people with, which kind of feels good. And that, but yeah, nothing notable like you like tanking archers to the face and getting booked.
Look, it is one of my favorite aspects of Frosthaven so far with you in it is playing the can I do this ability as Gaz plays the card down and we all try to match up the weird AoE shape and seeing which ones are within range 3 or 4, but anything that falls out of that, he can't. It's its own mini game as to whether or not a card can be played. And I enjoy the little discussion that we have as we're turning the card around in different orientations to just sort of see if everything fits into it.
Yeah, maybe what I need to do is cut out some templates that are just like cardboard hexes and that are in the weird shapes that I've got, so I can just place them over the board and say, all right, I can just do this. Because there's a couple of them that are really strange, and like I love what hex arrangement does to the options and movement and stuff like that in games compared to just like squares. And what it does though is it because they don't all line up properly. Like when you have like a shape, you're kind of sitting there trying to figure out where is this shape going according to me. And yeah, I've seen some of my next cards when I level up, and it's they only get weirder. They only get more odd shapes. So
Yeah, sorry. Remember when you were deciding which card to have and you handed them over to us? They're like, what do you think these mean? And it was just like, just red squares or hexes everywhere. It's just like, wow.
yeah.
But they all come with like a massive terms and conditions book.
Yeah, exactly. They definitely all of the cards have like this. Oh, that looks really cool. Wait, did you read the fine print? And that's I think that's my character in a nutshell. Anyway, sorry, I keep interrupting. So we got through the first room.
Yeah. Well, we got to opening the door and we're bracing for, another, probably a second room because a lot of these places tend to have 3 rooms on average, I'd say, 2 to 3. We're getting ready for that one. And we open the door and we are greeted with Stone Cold versus The Rock. We're greeted with Captain America versus Iron Man. It's basically a brawl between 2 bosses. And that's it. There's 2 bosses and a bunch of obstacles and a chest in the corner, and these 2 are duking it out. And this is kind of where the scenario goal, I reread it again, and it started to make sense as we started to set up that second room.
Yeah, well, this is where we had the leader of the Ice Cubes fighting Frosty the Snowman. And basically, I love this. Like, I think this is so cool. And I thought it was an awesome way of making us pick a faction that, as we go in, is going to have implications, and I'm sure it's going to come up again. It's just, so cool. I can't say how excited or how pleased I was with the payoff, because I kind of thought something like this was coming when we met the priest, and it was like, oh, you're going to have to choose between these different factions. I was like, I really hope that it isn't just pick A or pick B, right? Like press X or press Y, and therefore which way do you want to go? Because I mean, yeah, that doesn't have that payoff. But this, we went in and we basically have to pick a champion, I guess, in a sense, right? So pick one of these 2 characters that we want to side with, and make sure that we kill the other one. Right, do enough damage to satisfy the goal of the scenario so that you can't just sit there and let them wail on each other. But also we had this extra factor of like, make sure ours doesn't die. And I think might have been like a turn into that where someone was like, can we switch? Right? And I'm like, we can't switch. Like this is why we all agreed on this decision at the start. It doesn't matter how badly it goes. We've just got to like pump damage into one of them. And I just thought that was such a cool way of showing this conflict between these 2, kind of say heroes of their factions, but also then allowing us to pick which side we want to go with, and all the other cool stuff that we'll obviously experience based on that. So yeah, I did. Just in a nutshell, I thought that was an amazing way of doing that.
It had a level of tension that I wasn't expecting, and that was more. There were these two guys. They're actually fighting. It's not just narrated fighting. They're actually playing action cards and using their abilities against each other. They're enemies to us and each other, and where there were no allies. So we go in there. We run the risk of being a target of focus if we're getting too close and getting in the way. And like the Ice Fists Frosty dude, that guy hits for a base attack of 9. So you accidentally walk a little bit too close to him, he punches you in the face. They've got different ranges of AoE pushback. The other one, the Snowflake one, had less health actually to begin with, but had a lot of ranged attacks, and also showed later on it had a massive AoE attack, which we all grouped up for maximum DPS, right? So it just had this different dynamic, and as they start hitting each other, you then realize that, as soon as one of them hits the other one, we're like, oh, that's awesome because this is making it easier. Oh, wait, no, that's bad because we need to contribute more damage. If they contribute too much, then we're going to fail this. And then every time a blow was hit, I kept running into that roller coaster of, yes, the health's going down. Oh, wait, but we need to contribute more to it. And this is where we're talking about, is it too late to switch? It was just too much, right? It was a lot to sort of break in there. We ended up chatting about which one we were going to deal with. And we made our choice. We were going to keep the Snowflake one alive and beat up the harder one. I think you came up. Well, I was on the same wavelength as you, but you put it like that seemed like the maybe more difficult option due to maybe the more health with it, and therefore it might have a cooler reward.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard, right? Because it meant we have to deal more damage, and the one we had to protect had less damage. But having more life with the one we were killing also meant that there was more opportunity for us to be able to deal more damage. So I don't know. Yeah, it was a little bit of trying to work that out and see which one we liked more.
Yeah.
And I think though, you were talking about them kind of wailing into each other. I think the other part of that we realize, and this kind of reflects back to our last episode, is I think maybe we were like a turn or two into this, and I was like, wait, we learned this lesson. Okay, her dying is our lose condition. Okay, so, and I think at that stage we were kind of trying to stay away a little bit and not take damage these 9 attack 9s from this guy, right? Where he was moving, attacking 9 and doing, and I was like, no, we need
a face tank this.
Yeah, because I mean, it was only 2 rooms, so we came in with a fair chunk of cards, and so I think by that stage, it's like, even if we have to burn a card every turn to like not take that 9 damage and avoid it off her, that's just going to make it easier. And I think, look, we did it, and I don't know if that came into play a lot, but it was definitely a realization I had of like, no, we already learned this lesson. Let's not learn this lesson again. All right, let's just get in there, and then proceeded to set up the perfect AoE for Snowflake, who I think hit 4 of us or 5 of us, and she's not supposed to be on our team as well. So go figure.
Yeah. Did you remember Phil, Shadow Pooper, Deathwalker, was in the other room, and he spent most of his time attacking with his shadows. So he just kept kicking his hockey puck shadows into the room, and they were bouncing everywhere. And they kind of grouped up his shadows around it. And then I looked to where he was, and he was in the doorway. Like, he wasn't in the same room, and he was still doing all of his stuff. And this is where he does most of his damage. So all of our kind of lost cards and big abilities came out at this stage because we realized this was the end of the scenario, which was actually really good because you said it's a game of attrition. It was really cool that once we got to that second room, we realized we actually had a lot of cards that we could burn.
Yeah, and I think if thinking about this, to take a step back, like the time that we play of an evening and the time we've got to play really only lends us to do one scenario, which, spoilers, we've actually got a second scenario in this session, and we'll talk about how that impacted. I feel like this is actually a much shorter scenario, and if you were playing as a group, it's kind of, yes, it's like that forced link, but you'd go from one, and if you went straight into the next one, you really would feel that flow of like straight in there, you do a room, and then you get this epic fight where you just blow all your cards, and it kind of would be, it felt like a little bit of an epic finish to like a 2-part scenario. So yeah, again, really, really well designed, and I'm just frothing at how much more of this we're going to get to encounter.
Considering it's, our third scenario 4.
But let's just hope that they didn't just put all the effort into the first 3 scenarios and think, by that stage, people will be committed. So
the rest is DLC, so we'll just pay for it and just get it mailed to me.
That's true.
So we did succeed. We decided to hang on to the snowflake, not the fisty boy. And what was really cool when we read the scenario finish was that we actually unlocked that character. And we all collectively at the same time agreed not to open the box or look into the character until one of us is ready to make it, which I think is pretty cool. So already on the table right now, technically we've got the excitement of two, the Banner Spear and the Blink Blade, but now we've got Snowflake as well. That's just sitting there, and we know next to nothing about them, which is pretty cool for, those juicy retirements when they eventually come.
And I mean, I'm just going to make a prediction, but the first person to retire is 100% choosing that one, right? Like
1,000,000% unless we unlock another one between now and then.
No one's going to pick one of the starter characters, as cool as they may be, and we might get feedback from people like, oh, the Blink Blade or the Banner Spear are the best character in the game. They're amazing, and I'm sure that they're really cool. But this is in a box.
Imagine it's in a box.
It's in a box. Like, how would we not want to open the box?
That's true. So yeah, we completed that particular one. We then went through, rewards and whatnot, and also the battle goals, where battle goal sharing is always, I think, one of my favorite parts, especially when people make questionable decisions throughout the actual scenario that we just did.
When Detty makes questionable decisions.
I didn't actually make any questionable decisions this time because my battle goal, I had to actually discard a card to mitigate 2 or less damage from an attack. And I got hit for 5, 3, 4, 3, 7, 3, 9, and 4. I didn't get to get this one off at all because nothing hit me for 2. I was just getting hit for lots over and over again.
There's one way that you could have got hit for less than 3 would have been if you had put your tank abilities up instead of not putting them up, and then it would have mitigated down to 2, which you could have got your battle goal. So that's...
Look, at the very start when I was prepping, Gaz mentioned to me, maybe you should put your shield on because I didn't have my shield, that's what caused me to discard one of my cards from those archers. And at that point, I probably could have equipped my shield. But no, I've come this way, I've made this decision. So yes, you're right. I probably would have A, not discarded the card, and B, finished my battle goal.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're still wrong.
Just in saying that on that one, because I think that we've seen that one come up before. I quite like that one because it doesn't necessarily change your playstyle, but it does add a little bit more of that push your luck. Because discarding a card on 2 damage is pretty nothing. So, but being able to do it to get a tick, then you're kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. So, and it also means you got to put yourself out there to get hit. Right, which I think Calvin had that one in one of the earlier scenarios, and just so far behind everybody with all his summons, he's not going to get shot. So,
Phil had to burn 2 cards before his first rest, which is what you had last scenario. You guys get the easy ones. I don't remember what Calvin had. What did you have?
I had loot less tokens than any one other player.
Oh.
Which I almost failed, except that Phil happened to loot a second one towards the end, which was good because no one was looting because it was a tiny scenario. There was barely any loot.
That's true.
And I picked up 1 because I was like, I can take 1. Like, surely someone's going to get 2. And then everyone's just like, oh, we're not going to loot. I was like, oh, okay, hang on a second. I think maybe we should be doing some looting here.
Yeah, no, definitely did. I think Calvin got the chest. I can't remember what was in it.
Yeah.
But no, there was very little looting. I barely loot anymore because I have to stay, up there with the baddies and then keep moving up to the next ones. And you guys get to pick up all the stuff on the way.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, poor you.
DPS meters from that particular scenario. Gaz on his Geminate dealing with the most damage because of his stupid AoEs. I think it was mostly his AoEs and weird shapes pulling off 32 damage. Phil getting 26, most of his damage coming in the last 5 minutes of the scenario as per normal. I had 24, Calvin had 15. Calvin on his Bone Shaper, me on my Drifter.
Just on that one, that was a rough one for Calvin because once we cleared that first room, his skeletons were way behind and realized pretty quickly we had to get in there. And so I think because he can unsummon them basically and get the cards and then kind of resummon them again. It's not like a lost card for those summons.
No.
So he was obviously the plan was he was going to get in there and summon them back up again. But it didn't last enough turns for him to be able to get that. So he was kind of just playing on a like just his character. I think he might have got 1 or 2 up by the end, but then it was done.
Mm. No, you're right, and I think like he makes up for it with some of the longer ones with more trash, I guess. Damage taken. This is the tanking meter. I took 43 damage and mitigated 18 of it. Gaz, you also helped with that with 24 damage taken, 16 mitigated. So that's pretty solid tanking and also some pretty decent damage. Maybe not top damage, but I mean that's pretty jack of all trades. Oh, also I topped healing.
Didn't say I topped damage and came second in tanking only by 2 mitigation lower. So I'd say that's like
But you didn't
not
know healing. That is the holy trinity. Healing,
okay.
DPS, and tanking. I'm a jack of all trades. I'm a druid. All right? That's how a jack of all trades work. All right, what'd you learn?
What did I learn? I think from that one, I learned that I still need to, with my character, I need to go hard, right? Like I need to burn through these cards. I've got so many of them that even especially in a shorter scenario, but even if the scenario goes a bit longer, I just need to start doing that, like, and setting up and using some of those. The other thing was just more about how we're going to be interacting with Frosthaven, like this, having these kind of pivotal decisions early up is, I think, just a kind of clue in for the kind of decisions we're going to be making. So yeah, I think those two things were good, and I really enjoyed the experience of this scenario. I thought it was a really good end to that kind of mini story arc.
No, I enjoyed it too. I think it was really, really cool, really epic. I learned that I need to probably spend a little bit more time analyzing the first room and my opener. It's just because there's a lot of setup with Drifter. I can do a half setup, I can do a full setup, I can do 2 turns of setup, or even 1.5. Just analyzing how many ranges are there and what the plan is. I feel like I'm getting there, but I could probably do things better. Like you said, I could have equipped that shield and it would have been better, but I need to read the situation better, maybe, to work out whether or not I need the shield. But then again, RNG, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I'm giving you a hard time about it, but you're not playing it incorrectly at all. Like, just to be really clear, I'm just going to tell you should have done the opposite of whatever you did, right? Like that's what we're doing here. So it's but again, you're not going to know what you should or shouldn't do. I think you did great, like in this one and the last one, taking out and kind of focusing those archers towards you and actually just harassing them. And the thing is, we'll jump into the next scenario we did in a minute, but we're going to see that the starting scenarios, like these first 3, having tanks run up in your face and archers over the other side of the room, it's so brutal. Because their damage they're drawing, like other than 1 or 2 of their cards where they're hitting for 2 or 3, they're all 4s and 5s, and again, that just has the potential to absolutely just wreck you. So I think yeah, I wouldn't be, I'm going to regret saying this, but I wouldn't be too hard on your decisions or how you're going, because you're doing a good job of it. But yeah, I think once we see a bit more variety in the opening rooms, that your decisions might become probably easier, because you won't be trying to, how do I buff up and get to the other side of the room and deal with this all in one go? We're going to have different openings, so yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. So we came back, Frosthaven. Lovely Frosthaven. And we had our outpost phase. How did that outpost phase go?
It was mostly uneventful from memory. I did brew a potion. So I got a cool potion with some cool herbs that I found. I was quite impressed with that one. Again, love opening little advent calendar windows.
Actually, what's cool about that is I also gave Phil one of my herbs so that he could actually brew a because I already had one and then you had one. So giving one to everyone, regardless of what they did, it allowed us to unlock more to see what they did and make sure that everyone at least has one.
Yeah, it's a good point actually, because it's an interesting slight variation on the rule of you can't share anything, right? So you get loot, you get metal, wood, so lumber, hide. I think they're the main 3, right? And Yeah, so they're the three that you're using to build the outpost, build buildings, which you can collectively all contribute to. So if we want to build a building, which I think we did, we you can put them all into that together. But when you're crafting items, you can't share them. So if I want to craft something that takes 2 metal and hide, and I'm missing a hide, I can't just grab it off someone else, right?
Mm.
So I've got to actually loot that. Whereas I think it's kind of cool with the potions because you can put them into the Frosthaven's stock, which is something you can do with all your items. But when you craft a potion, you can actually pull from the Frosthaven stock, which
Yeah,
you
you can
can't.
pull herbs.
Yeah, which you can't do the others, and I think that's really cool because the potions are going to be things that most characters are going to want. And what I was worried about, I think we spoke about it last week or a week before, was you could get stuck going, I want a potion, right? Like, you've got a potion, I can see that, and we've unlocked it, so we know what it is. I really want that because it's going to work well with my character. I need one, I'm trying to remember the names of the herbs now, like arrow vine or whatever it is, and just never seeing it because it's random. Like, and then one other person loots one and gets an arrow vine, you're like, oh my God, there's an arrow vine, and now I have to go through my RNG's phase again to try and, get it. I think being able to share that one piece is good, especially because there's so many herbs.
Oh, there's so many potions as well.
Yeah, well, exactly, because then they all take different combinations. Whereas the metal, hide, and lumber is less of an issue because they're going to come up more often because there's more. I think there's more of those in the decks, or from what it seems like. So you might be chasing that one particular resource, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as bad as but chasing like one of like 6 different herbs.
Mm.
So yeah, I thought that was a good slight change to the no one ever gets to share anything ever kind of that the Gloomhaven and Frosthaven have gone with. So I did mention though that we built a building. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, we built logging log. It was something to do with wood.
Lumber mill, or am I just thinking
Yeah.
craft?
No, I think it was lumber mill, but it could have been lodging something as well. For some reason, I vaguely remember the word log in it somewhere. But either way, it's because there were 3 different buildings that seemed like the main resources in the game, and we were like, well, a lot of the things that we can see right now that we need to build involve wood. So let's see what this does and see whether or not it helps accumulate wood.
Yeah, like any civilization based builder game, the thing you need most of at the start is wood. Wood. We require more lumber. So we went with the lumber camp, logging camp, whatever it is, and we're hoping that it's going to start paying out.
Well, yeah, because we have to pay for our own wood.
Yeah, which is weird. We pay some dude to build it, and then when we paid him to build the thing that he gets to work at, he then is like put his hand out for 2 gold so that we can have some wood. And we're like, what do you mean? This is like our company. Why are we paying you for it? But I don't know, apparently Frosthaven does it differently.
And Calvin and Phil leveled up, so you and I are sort of falling a little bit behind in the old XP department. But those 3 lucky boys got to pick out a new card, and a new perk, which was pretty cool and exciting to see what they kind of come up with and how they expand and further customize their characters.
I think in that instance as well, because Kelvin got, just to talk about notable kind of achievements, Kelvin got his 3rd tick in his perks thing and he leveled up. So I mean, he actually ended up with 2 kind of perk things that he could do. And on all the character sheets, all the characters have a double one, and he picked that one up. And we didn't know what that did. He just scribbled some boxes on his sheet, but it actually allows him to summon one of his summons at the start of the game, like at the start of each scenario.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he's going to be able to start with a summon out, which is awesome. Like it's such a cool thing for him to be able to work towards and go, all right, great. Well, now I can summon that, and then I can summon another one. So it just, I'm assuming, I haven't read it, but that's what I think happened.
Because we literally played another scenario. Did he do that?
Yeah, he did.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I wasn't paying attention. I think that's
no,
why
I didn't pay it. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I think
awesome.
he got the Wraith out. That's why the Wraith was kind of moving in and shooting from the start. So, yeah, another really cool way that they've added a bit more flexibility and growth to the characters.
It's like talents, right? It's not just changes to your modifier deck. They're like full talents in a way.
Yeah. So I think that's really cool, and I like the fact it takes 2 ticks as well. Like, so it's not just it puts it above, harder to get than the other ones, and it is more powerful than the other ones. So you'd have to balance all of them. So yeah, no, it was good.
Afterwards, we then decided whether or not we were going to run a second scenario based on timing. And then we basically had 3 different ones to go to. I think we had scenario 5. I'm just purely memorizing this right now. I think it was scenario 5, and that was a continuation maybe of the path that we were already on. But some NPCs in Frosthaven were like, hey, we need you to go deal with that way and that way. One of them being a crab problem and one of them being a robot problem.
Yeah.
And we decided, let's try and do a short one. We tried to work out what was a short scenario without obviously looking at the whole scenario. And we saw the dot reference, and we picked one that had 1 dot because there are 3 dots. And we assumed that maybe like time, how long they are. So we picked one of the 1 dots, and Gaz also was like, do we want to go get crabs or robots? And then we, had a very logical discussion over, which one to go for. And I distinctively said, well, crabs, you can't have a ranged crab. And I'm so sick of ranged units. So we have to go with the crab. I mean, robots, it's going to be all range, lasers, pew, pew. We can't go that way. So we settled on Crabland.
Yeah. And not to skip forward too far, but how did you can't have a ranged crab deduction go?
I can't remember. Were there ranged crabs in there? I think there was.
There were.
Yeah, but I didn't, spoiler alert, I didn't really notice.
Not in the first room. That's the difference. Is that again, when we went into the first room, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We weren't faced with 4 tanky dudes up front with a bunch of tanky archers at the back. So again, we already kind of start seeing a slightly different setup.
So we actually ended up doing scenario 7, which is the crab one.
Yeah.
And we went in there and we set up all the crabs, long corridor, bunch of crabs between the little ones and the big crushy ones. None of them looked ranged. I was super happy. Went straight into my original plan of going into an actual tank build with shield and retaliate. And then just ran up the front. Literally ran right up the front of the first 3 and just stood there. And it was glorious.
Yeah, and this is where I think I started reevaluating how I should play my cards, because I've got a couple of interesting AoE and status effect cards. So one of them being a movement. What's it called when they can't move?
Immobilize?
Immobilize, that's it. One of them being like a weird curvy immobilize thing, and I managed to hit all 3 crabs that were in the front with that. So that was good because it kind of gave us that extra turn to set up, and I went really early. And then the next turn, I've got to jump with a disarm that disarms everything. Now that's a burn, so I haven't really used it before, but I jumped right in there and disarmed them. And these crabs were picking like target 2, attack 4s, pierce, like it just kind of was, again, just refilling my kind of Gloomhaven knowledge of like, oh yeah, that's right. Like we lock them down for a couple of turns while everyone just hammers into them, and it really makes a difference. Yeah. So I think, yeah, you're right. We all played a lot more aggressive, but I think we also played like a lot smarter than we maybe have in the last few scenarios.
Definitely. And like you said, Calvin would have had his Wraith out early, and then he would have maybe spent the next turn getting a Skeleton out. Wraith is already hitting stuff. That Wraith that hits for 1 and, squishy as hell, keeps nuking everything as he's running around cursing and all of that. Phil was out there with his shadow pooping and hitting stuff, and then you were as well. So they melted. That first room absolutely melted. And then, we had a door. I wish I could say more. There just really wasn't anything, that noteworthy in that room. It was incredible. Yeah. So we opened the second door, more crabs. Yep. This time, weird lightning, stabby crabs, which, didn't really... Oh, that's right. You went in there. You went in there nice and early, and you were chilling maybe 2 hexes from the door in the room, and then activated a long rest, right?
Yeah. So I opened the door, because you have no idea about how big these rooms are. I think we talked about this in the first episode because we're using these apps. We don't look at the book and see the scenario and kind of get a gauge for where it's going. We have no idea whether it's 1 room, 2 rooms, 10 rooms, whatever. So I jumped in this door. I had a couple of squares of movement, and I think I had like my range of 4 or 5. So I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to hit something, and not wanting to back off. So I went in, and
Post-production Detty here. It was at this exact moment Gaz's mic cut out for some reason while he was explaining this, but ultimately he was explaining that he was taking a long rest in the room and hoping that some of us could help him out.
rest now. Can anyone else just jump in here and tank these 6 crabs that are really probably going to munch my face in a minute? And look, you did. Although I think I got shot at a lot and didn't take any damage.
That's right, yeah.
I think I had a combination of them drawing negatives, misses, and I think I had a shield buff up that kind of I burnt through pretty quickly. But I just remember, taking a long rest, getting shot at like 3 times and not taking any damage and being like, this tanking thing's so easy, right? Like,
yeah. To be fair, they were hitting, like, you would flip a card, a monster activation, and it was like, oh, these crabs, the normal ones are hitting for 1 and the elites are hitting for 2 with Pierce 2. And it's kind of like, oh, I mean, yeah, the Pierce is annoying, but okay, whatever. Like, it was not even that bad.
I think, well, I mean, I'm pretty sure the Pierce came up several times because you decided to go shield spec for this one, and you constantly, every time you go to say, like, Pierce again.
Yeah, look, but it gave me XP.
Yeah, but no, the interesting thing about that was, I know we kind of discussed it afterwards, that maybe the 1 out of 3 dots is not length, it's difficulty.
Yeah.
Be really interested to go and see what scenarios 1, 2, and 3, or what the first 3 scenarios we did, what they were, because I feel like the second one especially was harder than this one.
Yeah,
and this was a 1.1. So I mean, there was a couple of times where it got a bit weird, but I don't think we were ever in danger of losing, especially with how easy the last room was. But yeah, I'd be interested to go and see how that kind of scales. So
yeah, well, once we cleared these guys, we opened the last door and we all met with a really bad smell. We had the coral cruiser or something. We had a coral something. That was the scenario victory condition. We just had to kill this thing.
Coral
ended up
corpse.
Coral corpse.
Yeah, which I feel is going to come up more. But interesting enough, sorry, just to interrupt there, because I just was thinking about this because we were discussing how easy that room was. So that Coral Corpse had a new debuff that we haven't seen. It wasn't in Gloomhaven. It was is it Frostbite or Brittle?
Brittle,
which is the next hit you take, you basically take double damage. Now it had innate Brittle, so every hit it did, it was going to apply Brittle. So obviously that's going to stack up. But the problem was it wasn't hitting that hard, and some of it its attacks. So I think it didn't attack like 1 or 2 times as well. It just did some status effects. I wonder if, because I know as you scale the difficulty up, you add more monsters. So I wonder if that room, just because we're playing on 1, yeah?
No, if you increase the difficulty, you don't add more monsters. The monsters are based on the players. The monsters scale in terms of health, damage, movement, things like that.
Okay, well then I have no idea because this room was ridiculously easy, so I'm not sure what was going on. I feel like if there was a couple of ranged crabs in there at least to sit behind all the
I'd be dead.
The terrain, because there was all this difficult terrain that hazardous terrain, right?
Yeah.
So everything you moved through took a damage. Yeah, it was a bit of a maze and a mess. I feel like if that corpse guy was in there making us brittle, and then these other shooty crabs were sitting there peppering us, that room would have been a lot harder. But yeah, anyway, here's what it is.
Yep. So when they looted the chest, I can't remember what that was. I'm really bad at remembering. I think it was blueprints. And we just proceeded to hit it. Now, one of these moments I did decide to use one of my big hitters and went in there with another charge of one of my persistence and really had this really beautiful wind up. And then my deck was also brand new shuffled because I pulled either a crit or a miss, I can't remember, from the previous one. And I turned over that top card after lining everything up and announcing my damage. He was also poisoned and wounded. And flipped over the card to the null. And that's the part where I yelled, amDirt, and I cracked up the S word. I just cracked it and threw the card across the table. I was like, ah, bah! So everyone found that incredibly amusing.
I feel like you threw the card at a whole bunch of the miniatures as well. You were like channeling it in a gambit. You like just flicked the card, hoping it was going to explode the table and just like flip it up,
Look,
right? Like that's how
oh,
angry you were at that time.
I am not one to throw something across the table. We've got other friends that do that, right? When they're passing something or whatever. I don't normally do that, which is why I'm not too sure what happened. It definitely just triggered me a little bit because I was super excited. It's like you're in a really easy kind of dungeon in a computer game or whatever, and it's like, oh, it's my turn to whip some damage out onto this guy, and you fail. And it's just like, oh no, they're gonna do more damage to it now. That's how it felt. It didn't feel tense from a, I need to do this. We're about to lose this. This is such an important hit. It was important for me.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the difference between when we have an amDirt moment and just absolutely fail the roll,
Oh
right? Like
yeah,
where it's just like, oh,
we
you're really
need
poor
that
at
person to
that.
hit this.
Oh yeah, that's going to be the bad one, right? Like this one was you were just like, oh look, I've lined up all of my ducks in a row, and I'm just going to absolutely whack this guy, and then it didn't happen, and you were obviously upset by it. We were like, yeah, this is great. Like we're enjoying this, right? Like again, embracing bad roles as part of it as much as you embrace good roles, and you came around pretty quickly. But yeah, we're gonna have moments like this where it's going to be a decent hit. It's going to be something that really needs to go through, and someone's going to pull that miss, that null, and it's going to be like instead of a oh, it's going to be like a oh.
Yeah,
Good. So what do we do now? And
yeah,
yeah, and we're just that's what the game's about. Like, so I'm looking forward to those because they just create so much tension.
and they create stories. So yeah, do you have anything else on that one? I don't really think that was really. It was a palate cleanser, right? After the really cool one, it was kind of like the second act in the show where it had a lot to live up to from the first one, and it kind of just felt kind of eh. It was target practice.
Look, yes and no. Like, yeah, I 100% agree with that. It definitely, it didn't. We were just going in and killing a bunch of crabs, right? Like, it almost feels mean if they weren't so big. But so yeah, I agree. It didn't have an epic feel, and I don't even know why we were there. We were just there because the town's like, oh, crabs keep annoying us, so go kill them. So we did. But the thing I liked about it though was it was almost that gimme kind of like a lot easier where we all got to do stuff. I feel like the first three scenarios have been so stressful. But we
Mm,
even lost one of them. We talked about that, right? We lost
yeah.
one to redo it. And I mean the end of the big boss battles that we did, that was kind of got a bit close. But this just felt fun, right? This
Mm,
just felt like just all going in there, getting to play your cool cards, do a bunch of cool things, kind of going like, oh, maybe I've overextended here. Can I get some help? And so I think from that aspect, it felt really good. I think
yeah.
palette cleanser is probably a really good term for it because it did uh, kind of reset everything a bit. And now we can choose where we want to go and what we want to do. And we can continue. So yeah, but look, I thought it was fun for
Look,
a generic scenario. I thought it was good, but yeah, it was a good chance for us to play around with our cards a little bit more.
well, I guess sometimes I forget the fact that we hadn't actually fought these yet, so that's always exciting and different to find a new enemy type and see what tricks they have. Like you said, we experienced our first brittle, condition. These kind of things were, yeah, they're all pretty cool and pretty fun. It may not have had the drama and the tension of previous ones, but it definitely was still, opening new boxes in a way and discovering new things.
Yeah, and I think and we'll talk about this in a sec with the battle goals. I think my battle goal that I chose maybe added an extra level of tension to it for me because I was trying to achieve it. So I think maybe these are the scenarios that you can really lean into those battle goals that might be a bit tricky.
Mm,
And you've also got those masteries, right? So each character has two kind of goals that they can achieve once off in their entire career that give them a free perk, and they're usually pretty hard, right? Like I think one of mine is discard a card every single turn, right? and the other one is I have to shift every single turn, which is
I feel
component
like
of
you
that
did discard a card nearly every single turn in that one. You burned through those.
Not quite. Well, this is the thing, right? I'm still in, I don't want to lose a scenario for us by just like doing that and then going like, oh wait, sorry guys, like I'm dead now. I can't do anything. Because I just wanted to get my perks. So I'm kind of trying to gauge where we're at, and make sure that people can kind of carry it themselves. But I feel like these are the scenarios that we want to be doing things like that on.
Yeah, no, you're right. They're a good like mastery farming in a way. It's just hard because you don't know whether or not you don't know it until the end, right? It's a hindsight thing because we didn't know how bad it was going to be after that first room. We didn't know what the second room was going to be. So yeah, it's kind of look. I take it back a little bit. Yes, at the end it was still a palate cleanser, but going into it, it's still very exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Look, 100%. If we have to do this similar type scenario and fighting these crabs, and we're 30 scenarios in, yes, it's probably going to be like, oh, really, this again? But sure.
That's right. So what was your battle goal?
I had to kill one of every monster type. Now, I thought that would be easy because when we set up scenario, there was two types of crabs. There was big crushy crab and there was little stabby crab. And I was like, there's like 3 of each on here. I reckon I can blow some cards and get it. And I actually did. I actually managed to kill one of the big crabs and kill one of the little crabs. And I was like, done. Like I've just absolutely nailed this. Like
Yeah, how many types of crabs are there? Like,
yeah, that's it. Because Detty had already announced before we went in that there couldn't possibly be any range shooty crabs. So I was taking that as gospel, and I'm going like, well, we're done on crabs. Look at me. I've just got myself 2 ticks. How good am I? And then I opened the room, and there was 4 of these shooty crabs, and I'm like, hang on, shooty crabs? That's not right. And then I think I almost killed one, but I drew my miss or a -2 or something like that, so I didn't kill it, and then I don't know, it was bad. But then I realized that because there was going to be this corpse crab shell thing,
yeah,
right, that we had to fight at the end, that's going to be a monster type. So as soon as I realized that
did it
was,
count?
yeah, well, it's a monster type, right? Like it's not
Okay.
a boss, or it was just an elite of that. I feel like we're going to fight more of these things as we go. So it, yeah, I'm pretty sure that counts. I mean, I didn't end up killing.
Look, if it didn't count, and someone who's listening to this can get in contact with us and tell us that we're idiots and that it did count, and we can go back and fix it.
Yeah, well, 100%. I mean, I didn't end up killing a shooty crab, so I couldn't. But yeah, it was one of those things that about halfway through the scenario, once there was more mobs out, I reevaluated. I'm like, yeah, if there are boss mobs in this is actually going to be quite tricky. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be one of those ones that I think when you get it, you might look at the scenario setup because it tells you what mobs are in it, right? And I know that was always something you could do in Gloomhaven.
We don't look at the scenario setup, but in the win condition, if it says something like "kill the corpse," dude, it sounds bossy. That may be an indicator that it might be a unique.
Yeah, I think that's probably what the better thing will be to do is just assess that and go, all right, well, how many different mobs are there, and is there an elite one that one of the 4 of us is going to kill? Because that's pretty tricky.
That is tricky unless we all line it up for you.
Yeah, so
I had to never take a long rest, which is just lovely, especially in one like this. If it was on any of the other scenarios, it may be a slightly different story, at least the first 2 that we did. Phil had to negate 5 of damage or more by discarding a card, something that I have no problems doing. Can't remember if he did that or not. And Calvin's is still on his table, and I don't remember what it was. But I'm sure he did it because he's always completing all of them, and he's just awesome.
Yeah, well, I think we all did pretty well. I think everyone got to do the things they wanted to do, which was good. So
yeah, true. DPS meters is just simple. I won. I had 40 damage, and I won in tanking as well. And I won in healing. So yeah, we'll just leave it there.
really, okay, that's interesting. We must have. I guess we'll have to let Phil and Calvin know that the plan worked. Let you top
Shut up.
going on about it.
No, to be completely honest, it was a different way of playing it, right? There were so many melees, and I even had range to retaliate that I had to keep up, and that's doing 2 damage every single time. I barely did any damage from swinging myself. It was just more taking the damage, and it just added up in a good way. Like, I don't know how often I'm going to be able to get away with this, but it definitely, paid dividends this time.
The other thing as well with with that was that I'm pretty sure 2 episodes ago, it might have been the first episode, I think you claimed admin error as a reason why you didn't top the charts. So I'm going to play admin error card and say that I demand a recount, and I reckon that I was at the top.
Well, everybody gets one, so yes, you can have that one. My first one didn't count because the first one's a practice game. I still have mine. Yeah, that's fine. Do you have anything else you want to say about that particular scenario?
No, I mean, interestingly enough, it did open up a bit of a quest chain for us, where now we've got to go kill more crabs to get crab crowns or something like that. So, and it's opened up two things. We can either, I think, again, this decision doesn't sound hard, but I guess it depends on the resources. It was like, did you want to make a raft and then try and sail out to find more of these crab temple things? Or did you want to go back to Frosthaven and build a ship? And it's like, I feel like the raft thing's going to be a bit rough. So I'm not in any hurry to go, kill the crab queen or whatever we'll have to do. So, but yeah, it was interesting because, again, this is this decision, right? And the two scenarios, they don't lock out from what I understand, but they're going different ways. And again, it's cool that we're getting a couple of different options to kind of tackle the same problem. So, or we are back in Gloomhaven, so we can, Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, so we can go back and have a look and see what it costs to build a ship. It might be doable, and maybe we want to continue this, or maybe we want to go punch some robots.
Well, we've just discovered how to cut down trees, so let's one step at a time work out how. We don't even know what a boat is, right?
Yeah, it's just rafts, like lots of rafts put together.
Yeah. So we've also joined the world of socials for banter, discussion, just to be told that our accents are hard to follow. So we've launched an Instagram page, which you can find at am_dirt, am_dirt. We've also created a Twitter account, which you can locate at amDirt, and that's the letter U. We also have our website at rollingterribly.com. And if you're old school, but not pigeon old school, you can always email us at contact@rollingterribly.com. So yeah, thank you all for joining us on another episode of a master's degree in Rolling Terribly.
And remember, when it comes to rolling terribly, it's all in the wrist.